Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randy Rhoads Show.
Turn up your mind.
Now, as I mentioned, the Senate will also conduct a second impeachment trial for Donald Trump. I've been speaking to the Republican leader about the timing and duration of the trial, but make no mistake, a trial will be held in the United States Senate, and there will be a vote on whether to convict the president. I have spoken to Speaker Pelosi, who informed me that the articles will be delivered to the Senate on Monday.
Wow. So we're going to have a trial. Nancy is sending the articles over to the Senate on Monday. But check this out. Mitch McConnell is filibustering the organizing resolution in the Senate. He's filibustering the organizing resolution in the Senate. That allows the Democrats to apply the Senate majority rules that they've already won. And Mitch McConnell, the bitter clinger that he is to power, is actually denying the Democrats the chance to be the majority by filibustering the rules of the new Senate. The organizing resolution is what the new rules are. Now, you remember somebody, a bunch of you were asking me, so does John Roberts have to preside over this trial? And I said, I don't know. We have to wait and see what the Senate rules are, what the Senate majority votes to have as their rules, their organizing rules. And this is amazing. Mitch McConnell is already obstructing their win because he doesn't want to let go of power. So he's literally refusing to accept the results of the elections for the Senate. Oh yeah, technically he's counting the votes, but he's trying to make the results mean nothing. So here we are today, and I know this sounds like process, but this is going to decide whether or not the United States of America can move fast, can move boldly, can get money out the door to people, can have any kind of success as the majority in the Senate. Now, we have the majority in the House, as you know, and we have the majority in the Senate, as you know, but Mitch McConnell is refusing to acknowledge that. He's refusing to vacate his majority leadership position in the Senate by threatening to invoke a 60-vote minimum to adopt the new rules. He knows he lost the election, but he's refusing to vacate the majority position. I mean, honestly, this is the most bizarre thing ever. And so what we need to do is get rid of this 60-vote threshold. It's the filibuster, right? The filibuster requires 60 votes to pass legislation. Now, we'll tell you, in 2013, the Senate decided not to have a 60-vote threshold to confirm district court judges. And in 2017, Mitch McConnell and his Republican majority decided not to have a 60-vote threshold for Supreme Court nominees. And that is how Donald Trump was able to get 3 justices. Now, if hypocrisy was a disease, Mitch McConnell would be ate up with it, because he was saying that you don't need a 60-vote threshold to confirm lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court in 2017. But back in Merrick Garland's day, when Obama was president, he said you need a 60-vote majority in order to confirm Merrick Garland, in order to even have a hearing for Merrick Garland. And once Mitch McConnell got power, he changed the rules. So now we have to change the rule. We have to get rid of the filibuster. You know what the filibuster is? The filibuster is ostensibly a tool to protect the minority. And now Mitch McConnell has decided to use it as a tool to protect to attack the majority. Because it depends on where he sits as to where he stands on the filibuster. But I want you to understand this. With the filibuster in place, no one can govern. And if the Republicans don't have the majority, then they want no one to be able to govern. Giving Mitch McConnell, and here's what he's trying to trade, and there's nothing on his side that we want. That's the crazy part. There is absolutely nothing on his side that we want. We have the majority. We've had power sharing before when we had a 50-50 Senate. We had it with Trent Lott. Remember him with the Devo hair, plastic hair? Trent Lott, and Tom Daschle, okay, who was barely a Democrat. But we had it. We had this power sharing agreement. And now Mitch McConnell will not even agree to the power sharing agreement that was negotiated between Trent Lott and Tom Daschle to address a situation just like this one. Oh, no. So he's saying what he wants the Democrats to give up in order for him to give up the majority, which he clearly lost. He doesn't have a majority. Is he wants the Democrats to put in writing that they will not abandon the 60-vote threshold for legislation, even though it's gone for judges. It's totally gone. Again, in 2013, Democrats removed it for district court judges. In 2017, Republicans removed it for Supreme Court justices. The only filibuster we really have left, it's not even on the budget, really, because the budget can be passed. Bernie is the chairman of the budget committee. If Mitch McConnell knows this. If Mitch McConnell actually agrees to the rules that have been agreed to previously when you have a 50-50 Senate, then Bernie would become the chairman of the budget committee. And the budget committee can pass legislation with 51 votes through something called reconciliation. But it doesn't apply to other pieces of legislation like Voting Rights Act, like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, or H.R. 1 that the House, For the People Act, which keeps a lot of this dark money out of politics. There's never going to be enough Senate Republicans to pass a Voting Rights Act. Okay, another one. There's never going to be that. And there's never going to be enough Republicans to pass anything on COVID relief, money, new money. It's just never going to happen. But what Mitch McConnell wants in writing is for Democrats to give up their ability to govern, to give up the idea that they would break the 60 votes for legislation filibuster, that they would, get rid of it. And we have to get rid of it because listen, McConnell, he's like, I don't know, if you gave up the filibuster, the idea of getting rid of it to McConnell, it would be like giving McConnell a sword to chop your head off and then pulling down your collar, and showing him exactly where your carotid artery is and say, giving him an unimpeded shot. Because if he's already invoking the filibuster rule to pass rules, can you imagine what he's going to do when it comes to sending money out the door, or when it comes to the For the People Act, keeping money out of politics, or when it comes to the Voting Rights Act, or when it comes to immigration reform, or when it comes to anything big, anything at all, anything that Democrats ran on and want to deliver? No, it will never happen. We will never be able to govern. We have to get rid of the filibuster now, because this is the moment in time when the new Senate votes on its rules, and those rules will govern the Senate for the first 2 years until we have the next election. And people are saying, oh, well, if you get rid of it, they'll use it against us. They will always use it against us. They will always prevent progress. So get rid of it.
all things Randy at randyrhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randy Rhodes Show.
The U.S. Senate has always been meant to be unreflective of the will of the people. Some of the writers of the Constitution directly acknowledged that. But even after senators became popularly elected in the 1900s, the Senate has become more and more anti-democratic, as population has shifted and ballooned in ways unforeseen to the designers. In the first U.S. Census of 1790, the population of the largest state, Virginia, was 12 times that of the smallest state, Delaware. Now, that gap is more than 5 times bigger. California's population is 67 times that of Wyoming's. And even some counties and cities dwarf states. On its own, LA County would be the 8th most populous state. More people live in Brooklyn than North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming combined. 51% of the country lives in just 9 states, meaning 51% of Americans now have 18 senators, while the other 49% have 82. Which brings us to today, when both parties hold 50 seats each, despite a huge disparity in votes won and constituents represented. In total, Democrats won their 50 seats with 83 million votes. Republicans, 20 million fewer, 63 million. Those 50 Democrats represent a total of 201 million people. Republicans, 40 million fewer, 161 million. It's important to say that race is a huge part of this growing gap. Giving an outsized voice to white people was a key part of the Constitution's intent, and that lives on in the Senate's current structure. The most overrepresented citizens happen to live in the whitest states. But even the Founding Fathers didn't intend for this level of unequal distribution, because they weren't designing for it. No one was planning for a dynamic, multiracial, continent-spanning democracy back when no one knew what a cell was. So even if you're a believer in some sort of body not directly responsive to the popular vote, the modern Senate is a far cry from the one originally designed. And in many ways, that's the story of the 50-50 Senate, a flawed design to begin with that has failed to evolve with the country.
That's exactly where we are. So Wyoming has 2 senators, basically, in a nutshell, okay? Wyoming has 2 senators, and California has 2 senators. And the difference in population, the difference in the number of people that represents is astronomical. The difference between the Bronx and West Virginia, the difference between New York City and, I don't know, Montana. Do you see what I mean? And it's unequal representation, and it's got to stop. So now, on top of unequal representation, meaning 67 million over here get 2 senators, and 1.5 million over here get 2 senators. Now they're saying that the minority can block anything and require the majority to have a super majority. Now, if Biden thinks that he is going to get on every piece of legislation that he has promised to deliver 9 Republican votes to get to 60, he's out of his mind. And so we have a choice now. We either save democracy and we govern the way that we promised ourselves that we would be governed, or we save the filibuster. Or we save some antiquated rule that was put there to obstruct progress, that was put there to obstruct every single move that America wants to make to get into the 21st century. Now, I'll say, Kamala Harris, when she was running, she said that, she would end the filibuster if it meant that they could get the Green New Deal through, right?
If they fail to act as President of the United States, I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal.
Okay. There was Kamala. Here is Biden.
What I said was that if, in fact, they are as obstreperous as is expected, we'd have to get rid of the filibuster. But the filibuster has also saved a lot of bad things from happening, too.
So you're open.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I thought I'm on record as saying that if the Republicans, if there's no way to move other than getting rid of the filibuster, that's what we'll do.
Okay, and now you can see that the obstruction has started at the extreme beginning of a Democratic majority Senate. because Mitch McConnell is requiring 60 votes to even accept the rules of the majority taking chairmanships of committees, and if there's a tie, he wants equal representation on all the committees. Now, usually whoever has the majority gets more members on a committee. He wants the same number of Republicans, the same number of Democrats on a committee. He's not sure like who should chair them. He's not really clear that he wants to give up, Senate majority status. He lost. This is crazy. This is unbelievable. So they're saying, well, if he obstructs, if there's obstruction in the Senate, then yes, we'll get rid of it. It's already started. How in the world are we going to get a health care plan through, an immigration plan through? How are we going to get a stimulus package through, which people desperately, desperately need now? How are we going to get to a $15 minimum wage? How are we going to get to a Voting Rights Act? How are we going to get the money, campaign finance reform, which is at the bottom of everything that screws us? Everything. It's the donor class, the elite class, the huge PACs, the dark money. Well, we've got a bill sitting over there in the House that's passed. How are we going to get that through the Senate if we have to rely on 9 Republican votes every time we want to do something? Answer, you can't. It won't happen. He started even on the rules. Why? Why is he picking the rules to wage this war? Because it's in the shadows. It's a quiet war, right? People don't pay attention to the Senate rules at the beginning of a new Congress. They just don't. And it's the most important part of the new Senate, because that is where the filibuster is either accepted or destroyed on district court judges, accepted or destroyed on Supreme Court justices, and now accepted or destroyed on legislation. All that's left is a legislative filibuster. Okay, I told you the budget can get through reconciliation, but the other things cannot. And it's got to be destroyed because we have unequal representation in the Senate to start. Millions of people get this. Get the same representation as a handful of people. I'm sorry. That is just baked into the cake, that is, and it makes it almost impossible to govern right there. But now you're going to have to get 60 votes to pass anything. No. Even Barack Obama, okay, in July of 2020, he said get rid of it.
By guaranteeing that every American citizen has equal representation in our government, including the American citizens who live in Washington, D.C. and in Puerto Rico. They're Americans. By ending some of the partisan gerrymandering so that all voters have the power to choose their politicians, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do.
I rest my case.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
We call this the McConnell veto. He used it when he was a minority to try to obstruct every good work to help out American families on health care, on housing, on education, on good-paying jobs, on infrastructure, on opportunity, on climate, on criminal justice reform. And so here's McConnell saying, hey, I'm in the minority now, and I'd like to have a veto over everything you want to do to help out Americans. Do you think for a moment McConnell would have agreed to saying, oh, Chuck Schumer, you're in the minority and you want a veto on everything I do, and that's okay? Of course not. It's absolutely just a piece of McConnell's delay and obstruction strategy.
Right, and it's all designed to make Biden a one-term president, number one, and number two, to win back the Senate, because Mitch McConnell is a bitter clinger to power. He lost his majority. He lost it with Ossoff and Warnock. He lost it in that Georgia election, okay? Now, 1 seat, 2 seats went to Democrats in the Georgia election, okay, in the runoff. So here he is obstructing from the very get-go, and people need to understand this, because We are just starting a new administration. We are just starting to have a grown-up in the White House. We are just starting to have a man in the White House and a woman in the White House who gives a damn about these crises that we are all facing: the economic crisis, the vaccination crisis, domestic terrorism is a crisis. And Mitch McConnell won't even let the Senate adopt rules on day one. It won't, not even the rules are acceptable to him after he lost. He lost. And no one can govern with the filibuster. No one. And if Republicans can't govern, then nobody's going to govern. This is a relic of the Jim Crow era, okay? But then again, so is today's Republican Party. So no wonder they like the filibuster so much. That's what Obama was saying in that July 20th address that he was giving over there. He said it's a relic of the Jim Crow era. What did he mean by that? He meant that this is not in the Constitution. The Senate rules are not in the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution says the Senate makes its own rules. Well, those rules were, just a majority rule where you have 51 votes. You have, let's say you had 100 seats. Back then you didn't, but now we have 100 seats. And so if you get 51 votes, you win. Well, they didn't like that back during Reconstruction. They didn't like that at all. And so the Southern senators decided that they would craft a rule that says that you need to get a supermajority in order to govern, in order to not have Jim Crow, in order to overturn Jim Crow, in order to overturn separate but equal, in order to overturn, voting rights and stuff like that. You needed to have a super majority. Well, that is not the way this country was intended to run. It's something that they made up out of whole cloth so that they could nullify all progress, especially on racial issues, especially those. John C. Calhoun, the great nullifier is what he was called. He was the father of the Confederacy, and he is the person that innovated and invented the filibuster rule for the specific purpose of empowering the planter class, the plantation owners. They didn't want to move toward what was a much better functioning economy, a much more just economy, a much more moral economy that the North had, which was, factories and making things. They wanted to keep the planters in power, so they created a regional constituency and they empowered themselves against the march of progress and justice. And they still are doing it. Why do you think they don't want a Democratic majority? Because the Democrats will do racial justice. They will do justice reform. They will do an immigration package. They will do economic packages that don't favor the elite, that don't favor the donor class, that don't favor the rich. They will do a $15 minimum wage. Now, the only thing that Biden can do with an executive order, he can raise the federal employees' wages to $15, but he can't do anything on, making $15 a federal law for all employers. He can't do it. Now, I'm a small business owner, really small. How many people do we have? Okay, and we still pay a lot more than $15 an hour because it's the right thing to do. And you're going to have the Joe Manchins of the world. See, we don't even know if we have 51 votes to get rid of the filibuster, because Joe Manchin is like, getting rid of the filibuster, well, if we end up back in the minority someday. I can guarantee you Mitch McConnell will not allow you to do a damn thing no matter what you do now, because he's a hypocrite. Not a damn thing. You're so afraid of you better govern now to ensure you're not a minority in 2 years. You need to be able to pass legislation now on things that people care about, like the health care. This repeal and replace, they told you it was a fundraising tool. It was just a joke, right? They told you that. So we'll never get a health care plan out of Republicans, ever, let alone a public option. We will never get a stimulus package out of Republicans, let alone a $15 minimum wage. We will never get a Voting Rights Act passed again with Republicans, never. We will never, ever get anywhere with a filibuster, with a supermajority required from people who represent 5 people versus 5 million people. And that's just to keep the numbers small and understandable. Everybody understands what this is about. It's about inequality and getting rid of it in every aspect of our lives, from housing to the justice system to inequality. We need to govern. Biden needs to move boldly, and he needs to move fast, and it needs to be simple. And we can do it that way without them, but we can't do it that way with them. There's not a chance.
The moderate wing of the Democratic Party has got their history wrong about where the filibuster comes from. It is a Jim Crow era relic. It is not something Madison wanted. It is something Calhoun wanted. Yes. As Adam Gentleson writes in his book Switch, which is like required reading for this moment. It's one of the many ways that structural racism is holding back the hands of progress, not just for people of color, but for everyone.
For everyone. For everyone. It's holding back all kinds of improvements to everyone's lives. We have to get rid of this freaking filibuster, I'm telling you. And if we don't save our democracy while we have the chance, we're going to lose it forever. Because remember, I keep telling you, and this is why I keep driving this home, we are only ever now with these white supremacists, white nationalists, with this crazy militia crowd. We are only ever one election away from autocracy, because they're frustrated too. They just can't figure out how government works and why it doesn't work for them.
This is the Randy Rhoads Show. To speak with Randy, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, here's Joe Biden just a few minutes ago.
Sometimes the anxiety about what's going to happen next is more consequential than what actually happened. But this is happening today in America. And this cannot be who we are as a country. These are not the values of our nation. We will not let people go hungry. We cannot let people be evicted because of nothing they did themselves. They cannot watch people lose their jobs. And we have to act. We have to act now. It's not just to meet the moral obligation to treat our fellow Americans with the dignity and respect they deserve. This is an economic imperative, a growing economic consensus that we must act decisively and boldly to grow the economy for all Americans, not just for tomorrow, but in the future.
Yeah, and if you think Mitch McConnell's going to go along with that when he can't even agree on the rules of being in the minority, then I don't know about your ability to lead us through this. Honestly, this is just amazing to me. This is crazy. I mean, if we treat Mitch McConnell generously, then what? He'll treat us generously when we're in the minority again because we failed to deliver. That's like saying, if a shark eats my leg because they're hungry, and then one day I'm starving, the shark will let me make shark fin soup out of its fin. It doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen. If he can't even agree on the rules of the Senate with him in the minority because he lost his majority. People voted, and he lost his majority. If he can't agree that that is true, how is he going to agree that people need $1.9 trillion in a stimulus package out the door now? How is he going to agree on an immigration package that gives DACA recipients, the kids, a path to citizenship? How in the world are they going to agree on a new health care plan? How in the world are they going to agree on justice reform? They won't. They won't. This is crazy. And because it's procedural, because this is a, sort of a inside baseball for people who don't pay attention to politics, sort of a stand that Mitch McConnell is making, instead of during the Voting Rights Act vote, or instead of during the stimulus package vote, or instead, he's doing it now from the very beginning, in the dark here, in the shadows, on a rules package. You should know what he's got in store for you. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Will he even vote to hold this president accountable for an insurrection, for inciting violence, for inciting a bloody coup? Probably not, because he's Mitch McConnell. He's the Grim Reaper. He loves that title. He loves that name, and believe me, he's earned it. There are so many dead people in this country through violence, through disease, through poverty, through despair. All because of Republicans' intransigence on making progress for the American people. No, they prefer to tax wealth lower than work. That's their that's their preference, their position. It's disgusting. It's obvious. It's in your face. And the sad thing is that the people who are trying to overthrow our government are doing it through violence because they think that's all that's left. Because government doesn't work. And it doesn't work because of Mitch McConnell. It doesn't work because of Ted Cruz. It doesn't work because of Josh Hawley. It doesn't work because of Rand Paul. It doesn't work because of these freaky Republicans who will do anything for donors, do anything for corporations. They will do backflips and twist themselves into a million positions that you haven't even ever heard of in yoga practice or the Kama Sutra or any other twister game. No, they just won't. They won't do it for you. Only for people who pay them. It's like the mafia, They protect people that can't go to the police for protection, that have to go to Congress for legislation to protect them from liability, for running workplaces that are full of disease or unsafe or dangerous. Oh, all we want is liability protection so we can have our way with the workers. Then the workers get peeved and pissed and, let's overthrow the government. See, don't you get it? They're on the wrong side of history, but history tells you something. It tells you that this particular party can't stand progress for the American people. They don't like small d democracy. They don't like it. Steve in New York.
Hi, Randy. First time, long time. I've been listening to you since 2008. So excited to be talking to you, and just thank you for everything that you've done over the years to keep me sane.
Of course.
So the reason why I'm calling you today, I absolutely agree 100% that the filibuster needs to end. But given that Joe Manchin has said that he won't support that, isn't this argument all for nothing, really?
No, because lately he said that Chuck Schumer should not cave. He said when Chuck Schumer said that Mitch McConnell was showing you who he is and that he's not going to give up, the ability to get rid of the filibuster in exchange for Mitch agreeing to the rules of Chuck Schumer being the majority leader. Here's the quote from Manchin. He said, Chuck has the right to do what he's doing. He has the right to use leverage in whatever he wants to do. Now, why would Joe Manchin, who said before that getting rid of the filibuster was BS, but he used the word. He actually said it. He said, no, that's BS. Why has he changed his tune? Why is he now saying, no, we need to be able to govern and McConnell ought to preserve the right to get rid of the filibuster? Because he knows what he's in for. He knows. He knows he's going to be right back in the minority in 2 years from now if we can't get these packages out the door.
And he's the obstructionist in chief. I mean, he'll do everything that's good for Mitch McConnell. He doesn't care about any of us. I mean, I've been out of work
and you know how you know that's May. And you know how you know that's true? He can't agree to an organizing resolution out of the gate. Out of the gate,
Yes,
this is such an obscure...
And this is why people hate politics. This is why a lot of people just give up on voting.
Exactly.
So,
and this is like right out of the gate. This is the foundation of the rules that the Senate will operate on. And people don't pay attention to this, just like they didn't pay attention to the Electoral College and how they vote in their own states. And then you certify that the states had certified, received them or whatever. People don't pay attention to the minutia. That's why he's staging this fight in this particular
So then
shadow.
what's the remedy, Randy? Like, what's the remedy?
Get rid of the filibuster. Get rid of it.
And how? How? Did they just vote?
Yes, 51 votes.
So that if Joe Manchin's open to it, why can't we just go do that now?
I don't know. I don't know what horse trading is going on. I don't know. Maybe Joe Manchin wants something for his vote. This is the way it works, and it doesn't work because that's how it is.
It's so frustrating.
Yes.
It's like so frustrating because I was really active this season. I even donated money towards Warnock's campaign. Living here in New York, just getting really excited about getting this maniac out of office and getting things done for the American people. And it just feels like here we are again, just like Mitch McConnell in 2008, going to make Barack Obama a one-term president.
Yeah.
He's not being as aggressive, like with his rhetoric this time, but it's basically the same thing.
It's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's out of the gate showing your hand and telling the entire country who will listen, okay, a lot of people won't, but the ones who will listen, that you got 2 years and we're going to obstruct those 2 years and then we'll get our majority back and then we'll obstruct everything all over again and people will get nothing. And that's the way we like it. And that's the way we like it. And that's why they're not. Really that's why Lindsey Graham is out there saying, if you erase Trump, you erase the Republican Party, because the Republican Party added to their small crowd 10% more. Yeah. Right, but they were all white supremacists.
Yeah, the QAnon maniacs.
Yes, maniacs.
It's ridiculous that they want to still have these people as part of their base when even they are starting to say that he's a loser and they don't want anything to do with Trump and that's on them.
Yes, because
I don't know why they're still hanging on to this guy.
Well, yes, you do. It's because doing the right thing is harder than just saying no and walking away. You know that from any experience you've had in life. Saying yes to things is hard. It's hard. Saying no to things is easy. Making things happen is hard. Building things is hard. Destroying things is easy. Just like hatred is easy, love is hard. Love involves compromise, and so does doing the right thing. And saying yes to things means you take responsibility for what you said yes to, and that you have to execute on a plan. Oh my God, it's so easy to say no, and that's why they do it this way. Now, here's the thing. McConnell and the Republicans are still chairing the committees. At this moment, they're still chairing them. And they lost.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randy Rhoads Show.
Turn up your mind.
We're going to finish the job of getting a total of $2,000 in direct payments to folks. $600, which was already passed, is simply not enough. If you still have to choose between paying your rent, putting food on the table. We'll extend unemployment insurance benefits for millions of workers beyond the deadline that's now set. It means that 16 million Americans who are currently relying on unemployment benefits while they look for work can count on these checks continuing to be there in the middle of this crisis. And with our American Rescue Plan, our economy would return to full employment a full year faster than without the plan. Even President Trump's now, not some liberal organization, President Trump's top former economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, said, quote, he absolutely is in favor of this rescue plan. This almost doesn't have a partisan piece to it.
And still, it will not pass because it will need 60 votes, and you will not get Rand Paul, and you will not get Hawley, and you will not get Cruz, and you will not get McConnell, right? Obviously, they are trying to stop being in the minority. because all they care about is power, right? And so if they're objecting to the rules that should govern the Senate without them in the majority, which is the case because they lost, and they're objecting to handing over the chairmanships to the Democrats who won those chairmanships. By the way, that does affect Joe Manchin. It does. Joe Manchin, he should be the chairman of a committee. I mean, I think he is. What committee is? He's like on Health and Human Services or Environmental, which is really disgusting, something like that. But he will not get his chairmanship of his committee. I'll look it up. He will not get his chairmanship unless and until these rules pass. And they're saying the rules take 60 votes. Why? Because if they put it up for a roll call vote right now, Mitch McConnell would filibuster it and say, oh, no, these rules can't pass. I'm filibustering, requiring a 60-vote threshold in order to end the debate on the rules. It's called cloture, okay? And I know that this is like in the shadows kind of stuff, but it is the foundation upon which a governing majority needs to stand. And if you can't lay the foundation, you can't build the house. And this is the very beginning, the very foundational exercise. The first thing that has to get done in a new Senate is to agree to the rules. And they're not doing it. And so what you have here are Republicans still chairing their committees, even though they lost. Do you know how offensive that is? Okay, let's... Bernie Sanders should be today, right now, the chairman of the Budget Committee. That's important because we have to get money out the door, and that's where that particular piece of legislation would begin. It would have to get a majority of the votes out of the Budget Committee as to the content of the stimulus package and the form. What do I mean, the form? Is it going to be a reconciliation bill requiring only 51 votes, or is going to be a straight up piece of legislation that would require 60 votes? See, and this is basic and it's entry level, and you need to know it. You need to know it because when Obama was president, a lot of people didn't know it. And Obama had a majority of the House and the Senate for about, 15 months, something like that. And in that short, brief period of time, he was able to do Dodd-Frank banking reform. He was able to do the ACA, but it didn't get rolled out for 4 years. Remember that? Remember that, everybody? Remember, now it's like everybody loves it, right? Everybody who has it says, I'm very happy that Obamacare is there. I'm very happy that I don't have to pay more for pre-existing conditions. I'm very happy that I have a chance to, purchase health insurance and not have it attached to my job because I wanted to start my own business, or I wanted to, go to work, over here and they didn't have benefits. So now I can go to work over here. Gave people choice about where and how they would work. Okay? They did that and they got a stimulus package out the door. And then people did not understand how important that stimulus package was because it wasn't big enough. People didn't understand that the ACA was going to be very popular in 10 years because it didn't do anything for a couple of years. It didn't do anything for 4 years. So they didn't feel. And so 2 years later, they voted the Democrats out because they didn't feel the awesomeness of banking reform. They didn't feel the awesomeness of the stimulus. They didn't feel the awesomeness of saving the auto industry. They didn't feel, and that's what we did at the beginning. Well, now we can't do jack. I mean, here he is saying, we need to get another 1,400 to make a total of 2,000 out the door. We need to do this. We need to do that. We need to blah, blah, blah. No one in America should be hungry. Nobody should work a 40-hour work week and still be poor.
Our recovery plan also calls for an increase in the minimum wage.
Yeah, that'll happen.
At least $15 an hour. No one in America should work 40 hours a week, making below the poverty line. $15 gets people above the poverty line. We have so many millions of people working 40 hours a week working, and some with 2 jobs, and they're still below the poverty line.
$15 an hour isn't going to get you above the poverty line, number one. Okay, because what is that? 15 times 40, how much is that? $500 a week, $550? So what is that? $2,000 a month? It's not going to really, it's $24,000 a year. It's not really going to get, but it's a start, right? We're not even going to get there. McConnell, you really think McConnell's going to vote to raise the minimum? McConnell is very busy trying to get liability shields in place for these $7 an hour jobs, the companies that provide these $7, $25, $8 an hour jobs. He's trying to give them liability protection so that they can ignore COVID regulations. They can ignore, safety regulations. He wants to abolish OSHA, which is a simple workplace safety board that just makes sure that people are going to work and that the floor doesn't fall out, underneath them, or that the roof doesn't cave in, or that there's a window to climb out of if there's a freaking fire or a fire escape if you're on the 15th floor of a freaking textile factory. I mean, come on. These people are never going to vote this way. And in 2 years, America will give up on the Democrats, too. And I'm telling you, it starts right now. It starts right now. I get that ordinary Americans probably don't care about this. But they need to, because it is the beginning of the impediments that are being thrown in the way of making progress in this country. Dana in New York.
Randy.
Dana.
Well, first off, I'm turning the big 50 today.
Oh, happy birthday!
Milestone day for me. I was telling your screener, I decided I know they're not all going to suddenly turn into Stokely Carmichael, but the hope is that we could at least nudge the conservatives still creeping around in the Democratic Party a manageable distance to the left, so that we can actually get a good chunk of the unfinished business of
Here's
the
what
New
you
Deal.
say. Here's what you say to the centrist Democrats, the blue dogs, the DLCers, okay, the corporate wing of the Democratic Party.
The conservatives.
This is what you say. You're in the majority now. Do you like it better in the majority, or did you like it when you were in the minority? Up to you. Pick a side. Honestly, that's all you have to say to them, because we are in the majority and we need to act like it. We need to move like it. We need to vote like it. The American people are suffering. Everyone knows this, including the centrists.
All things Randy at randyrhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randy Rhodes Show.
Biden used his first full day in office Thursday to unveil a national strategy to get the pandemic under control.
We didn't get into this mess overnight. It's going to take months for us to turn things around. But let me be equally clear. We will get through this.
Releasing a nearly 200-page plan and signing 10 executive actions. Among them, using the Defense Production Act to increase supplies for vaccines and testing, ramp up production of PPE, and extending mask requirements for interstate travel on buses, planes, and trains.
Our national plan launches a full-scale wartime effort to address the supply shortages by ramping up production and protective equipment, syringes, needles, you name it. And when I say wartime, people kind of look at me like, wartime? Well, as I said last night, 400,000 Americans have died.
And when pressed about whether his goal of 100 million shots in his first 100 days was enough, Biden giving this answer.
Come on, give me a break, man. Come on, you guys. That's a good start, 100 million.
Dr. Anthony Fauci noting the United States is in a very serious situation, but also hopeful the new administration will help regain the public's trust.
The idea that you can get up here and talk about what you know, what the evidence, what the science is, and know that's it. Let the science speak. It is somewhat of a liberating feeling.
Anthony Fauci is he's liberated everybody. He's unhinged. He's gone crazy. No, I mean, listen. This is the crisis that we find ourselves in. It's from dereliction of duty for 4 years. It's literally from a man who didn't give a rat's ass about anybody but himself, and allowed for a virus to take over the United States. We're doing worst in the world on the number of people who have gotten it and died from it. And now we're having a vaccine crisis, and the money to distribute the vaccines is inside of this stimulus package. And if you think that the Republicans are going to vote for an almost $2 trillion stimulus package that goes to the American people, forget it. If it was a $2 trillion tax plan that went to the top 1% of Americans, they'd be all about it. You wouldn't even be talking about the filibuster or the rules of the Senate or how's it going to work, or no. $2 trillion out the door for the donor class, for Wall Streeters, for the banks, for corporate titans to offshore their income, to not pay taxes, to come up with less than zero in a tax. Meanwhile, we're sitting here talking about $15 an hour, which would produce what, $600 a week, $31,000 a year, something along those lines, before taxes. Okay, in a state like Texas, which is not a high tax state, you'd still pay about $4,600 a year in taxes, and you would still be at $26,000 a year. I mean, honestly, they're not even for that. And that's with us working 40 hours. They're not even about that. They used to say, oh, well, we're not for paying people not to work. But they're not for paying people who do work. They're not for paying people. When are you going to get that through your head? And that is why America is so frustrated. That is why people are so angry. But the 10% that are so angry and violent about it have no earthly idea how politics works. They have no earthly idea how government works. They have no idea what good government looks like, smells like, tastes like, because they've never experienced it in their lifetime. Okay? We had good government for about, I don't know, under Bill Clinton, we had some decent governing. We had a decent economy, let's put it that way. He deregulated so much crap, though, that we lost all kinds of media jobs. I mean, just everybody got fired. The little companies disappeared. The local news disappeared. The local radio disappeared. Big corporations bought up everything, every mom and pop. It's disgusting what deregulation does to freedom of speech, to the individual community, to having a local broadcaster on the radio tell you where you could go get a COVID vaccine. Oh my God, that doesn't exist anymore. And that's because of deregulation. Same thing with the banks. Deregulating the banks allowed the banks to package good mortgages with bad mortgages, like I always compare it to cabbage because I like to make the coleslaw. So you have your red cabbage, that's good, and you got your green cabbage, and it's got E. coli. Guess what? If you shred the red cabbage with the green cabbage that has E. coli, the whole bowl is tainted, and that's what they did. And then they sold the pieces of the coleslaw in little bowls, and no one knew how much of it was tainted and how much of it was good. They were all shreds. Oh my God, they are devious. They are devious and disgusting. And people can't figure it out. They just can't. How does this happen? How does this happen? It starts right here. We have a brand new Congress. Brand new. Brand spanking new, like a brand new baby. With a little pink tushy. And little tiny, pink noses. And they're just adorable. Ooh. You want to make the best for them. You want to do the best by them, right? You want the new baby. You just want to swaddle it and love it. No, not in America. They don't want to pay any attention to the baby. They don't want to pay any attention. The baby is born and we lost, and so screw the baby. But you have to pay attention to the baby. You have to nurture the baby. You have to love the baby. You have to feed the baby. And you have to give the baby the rules. The rules. And they won't even agree on that. They won't even agree on that. Do you understand the kind of obstruction that we are going to face from the Republican Party when it comes to giving relief to Americans, ordinary, working American families? The money for the vaccinations is in that stimulus package. The money for the economic crisis is in that stimulus package. It's unbelievable. Brian Deese, who is the National Economic Council Director now, he's brand new. Get to know him.
It's pretty clear. We're at a precarious moment for the virus and the economy. Without decisive action, we risk falling into a very serious economic hole, even more serious than the crisis we find ourselves in.
Oh, my God.
And economists across the board, including today President Trump's former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, arguing strenuously that now is the time for that type of decisive action for the economy, and that we can't wait to provide the resources to make sure that we can open schools, we can get vaccine shots in people's arms, and we can provide that bridging relief to families and small businesses. There's a lot of support. I met with a group of mayors yesterday, bipartisan group of mayors from across the country. You hear from mayors, you hear from governors just crying out that in order to take on these crises, the public health and the pandemic and the economic crisis at the same time, now is the moment for that kind of decisive action.
You think you're going to get that from a Mitch McConnell-led minority that is requiring 60 votes, meaning 9 of his caucus voting with Democrats? You really think that's going to happen? I mean, you'll get 3. You probably get 3. Collins, Murkowski, maybe a Mitt Romney. Where are you going to find the others? Well, you can't. 51, everybody. Majority rules.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Over 400,000 Americans have lost their lives during this pandemic, and millions more have lost their livelihoods. We are facing an economic crisis brought on by a public health crisis. And today, the Biden administration took bold action to provide relief to those who are struggling most. Here are 5 actions that this administration took to help Americans today. We are extending moratoriums on evictions and foreclosures of Americans who are at risk of losing their home. During a global pandemic, we cannot let anyone get evicted. We are increasing support for small businesses. We will ensure that existing relief dollars get to businesses that have been hit the hardest, not just the well-connected ones. We will expand food security benefits like SNAP for the lowest income Americans. President Biden's action increases food support benefits for families struggling during this pandemic because no one should go hungry. We are pausing student loan payments. The last thing Americans need to worry about is student loan debt, while the job market is suffering. We will increase food money for kids missing meals due to school closures. So many children rely on school lunches for meals, and just because schools are shut down doesn't mean we can let them go without. And this is just the beginning of our work to build back the American economy better than it was before. We will keep working for you to face this economic crisis head on. That's our commitment.
It'll be the beginning and it'll be the end. You cannot save this economy with executive orders. The things that he did do today through executive orders are those 5 things. So evictions are paused. Small businesses will get, another round of PPP if they have lost 25% from this time last year. SNAP benefits will be increased. Student loans will be paused. Let's get rid of those. And schools that are shuttered because of COVID, those children will get additional food support. Those are things he could do through executive orders, okay? The rest of it has to come from legislation. And we don't have a chance at that with Mitch McConnell claiming that he's still the majority leader because they can't pass a rule. It's called the organizing resolution. It is the job one, and they can't even get that done. This is sad. And the idea, well, what if we're in the minority? Then they'll be able to pass any piece of legislation they want with 51 votes. Well, I'll tell you what, if we don't do it now, we'll be in the minority in the blink of an eye. If we do it now, and he's FDR-like, I know he took down, Jackson's portrait and put up, FDR's. I know FDR is in the Oval Office now. Look, we need immediate house on fire disaster relief, just like FDR had to deal with. Okay, when FDR became president, you had rolling bank closures. You had an economic depression. It was just beyond. And that's where we are now, except it's not because of banking closures. It's this time because of a freaking pandemic out of control. It's because people haven't gotten paid a living wage in 30 years in this country. And it's all because the Republicans figured out a way to block progress every single time. They block it as a minority. They block it as a majority. Look, here's the thing also I want you to know. You know that Obama clip I played here? I'll play it again. And the reason why I started it here with statehood has to do with the filibuster.
By guaranteeing that every American citizen has equal representation in our government, including the American citizens who live in Washington, D.C. and in Puerto Rico. They're Americans. By ending some of the partisan gerrymandering so that all voters have the power to choose their politicians, not the other way around. And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do.
Oh! Exactly. Okay, so that was John Lewis's eulogy is what that was, right? And Obama was saying, hey, D.C., it's the worst example of no representation. Taxation without representation. Okay, it's the worst example. Puerto Rico, also, worst example of they can't vote for president, okay, because they're not a state. If we wanted to add them to the 50 states to have 52, let's say, how would we do that? How many votes would that take? Well, with the filibuster rule, 60. That will never happen. Without the filibuster rule, 51. That could happen. And guess what that does? Right. That gives us 55 senators, including Kamala Harris. 55 votes. Still not enough to overcome a filibuster, but it's aggressive governing. Now, you're telling me that if Mitch McConnell thought that he could get 4 more senators in his caucus by making D.C. a state or Puerto Rico a state, that he wouldn't do it? Of course he would do it. But he will not get that from making them a state, either of them. And that's why they don't do it. Rich in Denver.
Hey, Randy. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Wow.
I'd love it if, we could celebrate a little longer, but we've got to start working now. This is BS. They were the Reagan tax cuts. Then they became they were supposed to sunset when Bush became president. Then they became the Bush tax cuts. This stuff's been going on for 40 years, and even a $15 an hour wage isn't even enough in this day and age now.
No, it's not.
It needs to be like a $20 an hour wage, you know?
Yes.
I mean, Mitch McConnell, I was telling Brett, Randy, Mitch McConnell is exactly like Trump. He's the snake. He always was. He was when he came in. He was a poor man when he came in 1984, and he loves power. And what do they say? But power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts absolutely. We've got to get rid of the. We've got to get Citizens United overturned.
Yes.
We've got to get the money out of politics. It's completely toxified the situation. Half these guys wouldn't be even in Washington, and if there was no moneyed interest in it, because It's not for the people. It's for the corporations. It's for the
they're prostitutes.
It's for the 1%. Right? Exactly.
Yes.
You know, and as you were talking about earlier, I remember with Chuckle Nuts when he said, remember when he said go out and buy a mini McMansion? He was talking to that one woman. He said, how many jobs? You know, are you working 3 jobs? That's uniquely American. You know?
Bush. I mean, yeah. I remember that.
And you were talking about the toxic coastal. It's exactly this is the same stuff you've been talking about and preaching for. You had that woman yesterday who said, "Where do people get it? How to?"
Sorry.
This is the Randy Rhoads Show. To speak with Randy, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Make no mistake, there will be a trial, and when that trial ends, senators will have to decide if they believe Donald John Trump incited the insurrection against the United States.
There's been a lot of that going on. Did Donald Trump incite the erection? Donald Trump couldn't incite an erection in anybody, even Lindsey Graham, I don't think. I don't know. Everybody's stepping over that insurrection word, calling it an erection. I don't know. I don't know what that is. It's creepy. I'm sorry I had to put that in your permanent Rolodex, but it was in mine. It's bothering me. But, there needs to be justice in order for there to be healing in this nation. And in order for there to be healing in this nation, there needs to be justice. That is a fact. Nancy Pelosi is sending the articles over to the Senate on Monday. Do you think, I don't know where that's coming from. Do you, here, let me try this. One sec. Okay, shouldn't do that anymore. Do you think that you're going to get 17 Republicans to vote to remove to disqualify? Because, okay, here's the thing. People say, oh, well, you can't impeach a man in Florida. Every Florida man needs to be impeached. That's just a fact. But of course you can. He did unlawful things while he was president. And impeachment has 2 portions to it, 2 parts. One is to remove a guy from office or a girl from office. He's gone. The second part is to disqualify them from ever holding a position of honor or trust ever again. So you have 2 parts to the trial, right? You have the removal, which is done. We did that. We voted. And now the disqualification part, it can't be severable, okay? And if they want to make it severable, meaning, well, you can't remove him because he's already gone, fine, we get that. We're not stupid. But the disqualification part, have the trial based on that. But you must have justice in this country, else a president could do whatever he wants the last few weeks of his presidency, including overthrowing the government, including shooting people, killing people, ordering the killing of people, droning Americans, starting, bombing cities. And there would be no way to... It makes no sense, right? Because it's nonsensical. It makes no sense because it is nonsense. So Monday, prepare yourself. But today is Rules Day. And everybody wants to know, well, will John Roberts preside? Gotta pass the rules. The Senate makes its own rules. It's doing it today. And it can't agree. Mitch McConnell can't agree on the rules. They're still occupying the majority position in the Senate, the Republicans are, even though they lost. That's sick. That's twisted. That's just like what Trump did, except Mitch McConnell counted the votes. He just refuses to say they mean anything to him. Do you know how twisted a government that is under Republican rule? They have well, I don't want to say America's broken. I like what Amanda Gorman said. She said, we're not broken, we're just not finished. That's optimistic, and I like that. But this is crazy. We don't even know if John Roberts needs to preside over this over the Senate trial, and the articles are going to go because they can't agree on the rules at all. I mean, it's ridiculous. And somebody called during the break and said, can you explain, why they don't have to stand there and filibuster like on the floor without going to the bathroom like they used to have to do? It's because the Senate makes its own rules, and they decided that you didn't have to do that. And that's where we are today, too. The Senate's making its rules. I can't tell you how important it is. I can't stress to you enough how important it is that the rules favor a majority vote on legislation, that the rules say Mitch McConnell is not the majority leader. The rules say they have to give up their chairmanships because they lost the majority, and that has not happened. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is the foundational first vote that decides whether we govern aggressively and get our stuff done, or status quo, another 2 years of nothingness, another 2 years of obstruction from the Republican Party. Now, when they're in the majority, they don't have to obstruct. They just don't take anything up, right? You know how many bills are sitting in the House that Mitch McConnell refused to take up? He refused to put them on the floor. So that's what they do when they're the majority. When they're the minority, they want to obstruct with a 60-vote threshold to get anything done. No. You know why FDR was so successful? He had a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, Democratic presidency. People liked the result. They liked it. We had Democratic majorities for 40 years. Why? Because we did Social Security, because we funded the arts, because we opened the banks, because we employed thousands of Americans in the Civilian Conservation Corps. By the end of the first term of FDR, we had Social Security, and we reduced senior poverty in this country to almost nothing. People liked it. Our way of living and governing, people like it. They do. And that's what the Republicans are so frightened of. That people will start to see, oh my God, Democrats' ideas are better for my family. They're better for my children. They're better for my pocketbook. They're better for my ability to buy a house, my ability to educate myself, my ability to, do anything in this country, move freely about the nation. It's better. Civil rights are good. We have a climate crisis. Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, Republicans are real interested in that. Yeah, they're real interested. Pam in New Hampshire.
Hey, Randy. I don't think they're afraid of Trump. I think they're afraid of Putin. And you got to remember, Joe Biden warned Mitch McConnell what Putin was doing. And Mitch McConnell relaxed those sanctions so he can get that aluminum plant in Kentucky. And, they went to Russia and the NRA and the RNC. So they're not afraid of Trump, and I think Mitch McConnell needs to be investigated.
That's a whole other thing. Right now I just want Mitch McConnell to be the minority. I want him to, be part of a group where his vote could be totally undone by 51 Democrats and progress can be made. Okay? It can.
That's what I want, too, but I'll take the 51 majority and him in jail along with his wife, who is being investigated for sending PPE money to her family over in China. So they're all crooks. So they need investigating.
Well, I don't know that we'll get there, but we have a trial of a president that we have to conduct. We don't know what the rules of the trial. Oh, by the way, Lindsey Graham found Donald Trump a lawyer, a South Carolina lawyer. Seriously, a guy named Butch. And Mitch McConnell wanted the trial delayed. He wants it delayed so that Butch can, get up to speed. Are you freaking kidding me? You could give Butch 5 years to prepare. You cannot defend the indefensible. And Mitch McConnell opened his mouth, okay? He's already spoken. And he already told you that the President of the United States is responsible for inciting this mob.
The last time the Senate convened, we had just reclaimed the Capitol from violent criminals who tried to stop Congress from doing our duty. The mob was fed lies.
Oh.
They were provoked by the president and other powerful people. And they tried to use fear and violence to stop a specific proceeding of the first branch of the federal government, which they did not like.
But I'm a no. You know that's coming. The president provoked a violent mob. The president caused violence to happen. Other powerful people caused violence to happen and provoked other people. But I'm a no to hold him accountable. You know that's coming. It's a mess. It's a mess. And the unfinished work is obvious. Get rid of the filibuster. Get rid of that right now. Aggressively govern, Democrats. Get progress to the American people. That is awesome, that they can feel, that they can taste, that they get in their arm. Get it done. Can't do it with a minority party that requires, 60 votes. Can't do it. Wake up. Time to govern. Time to apply justice, rules of justice. Time to heal. Have a weekend.